So, I wanted to show you guys my experiment with these cameras. We got the Canon M50 on the right here, the Canon RP on the left. So, here's the conundrum. I'm trying to get the same image in video out of both cameras. I'm trying to get an equivalent image. Look as similar as possible so you just can't tell them apart. Funny thing is, the M50 is supposed to have more dynamic range than the RP. I don't believe that because every time I have the same settings on the M50, there's just more built-in contrast. There's more baked-in contrast straight out of camera than there is on the RP. Even if they have the exact same settings, same picture profile and everything. And let me show you real quick. So, on the back of the cameras here, this is not a scientific test, but it's a very similar scene on both cameras. I have them pointed at my fridge. I got some brights, some lights, some blacks going on, or at least shadows. And now, right now, the settings I have, the histograms look very similar. I have them both on CineStyle. I have them at an equivalent lens length, same ISO, same shutter speed, f2.8. You know, so I've got the nifty 50 on the Canon M50 here with the nice adapter there, and the official adapter on the Canon RP with the 7200. It's at about 90 millimeters, somewhere around there, just to get a similar field of view. So here's the problem. Let me show you what I had to do to get the histogram and the image looking so similar. Come on, wake up. Looking so similar on both cameras. So you can see this, the histogram on the M50 and on the RP are basically identical right now. They're not perfect. If anything, it's just a touch more compressed on the RP. So let me go into the settings and show you what's different on these cameras, what I had to do to get them to look this similar. Got CineStyle on there. Alright, I've got the contrast up by 2 notches on the RP. On the M50, I have the contrast set at 0 because I wanted the histogram basically that wide. For easier post-processing, that is a good amount of contrast just built into the image. So let's see what happens if I drop the contrast on the RP down to 0. Look at the histogram. Might not see much of a change at first, but notice very carefully, like look at the red. See how wide it is? The shadows right on that line, and the highlights peak right below the last line. Now look at the M50 histogram. Shadows are below the last line. Highlight peak is right on, maybe slightly above the last line. Let's go back to the RP. You can see the histogram is more compressed on the RP. And I can see this in footage coming straight out of the camera too. The M50 footage is more crunchy, it's got more contrast. It's not a bad thing, but it shows you that it just has more baked-in contrast straight out of camera, and you can't do anything about it. To me, quit turning off. To me, that means that the RP has better dynamic range, at least in video, than the M50 does. And I was surprised by that at first because it's supposed to be the other way around. The RP is supposed to have 11.9 stops of dynamic range. M50 is supposed to have about 14 stops. I don't believe that for a second. Those are the official Canon numbers. There's no way, at least with the noise floor and just looking at the histogram, there's no way this thing has 14 stops of dynamic range. I'm sorry. Same exact settings. And of course, the color coming right out of the M50 is not as nice as it is on the RP. I'm just going to go ahead and put the contrast back at +2. The unfortunate thing about this is that I'm basically having to cripple the RP just to make it look like the M50. But I'm okay with that. If I get a similar enough image straight out of both cameras that they're basically equivalent, then I'm happy. That's what I'm going for, because I want to shoot a movie with these. So let me show you the settings in the menu. Using both cameras has me mixed up because the menu buttons are totally different. Go to picture style. Alright, so CineStyle info button, thank you. CineStyle, I had to put the color tone up by 2 notches. Why? Because the M50 is really red. The image coming out of the M50 is really red for some reason. On the RP, it's much more balanced. It's much more natural. It's very biased toward red on the M50. That's the only other difference. And you can see I have the sharpness up at 3. You might disagree with my doing that, but the reason for that is on both cameras, CineStyle is very soft, and I'm doing as little post-processing as possible. Basically, with these settings, all I have to do in post is tweak the colors a little bit to however I want them. I usually warm them up and add a little bit of magenta, and then just lower the shadows to taste. And the nice thing about a compressed histogram, or the flatter image, is that if I need to, I can actually go ahead and change the brightness of the image in post if I need to match the footage. So yeah, M50 is not as good as the RP, in my opinion. And I just showed you on the histogram, it has just more built-in contrast coming straight out of camera than the RP does. I thought I'd show you guys that. You can't trust official numbers sometimes. For all intents and purposes, the RP has more dynamic range. I've noticed that many times. It just looks better. Yeah, thought you should know.